Have you ever had that one soul who felt familiar long before you truly knew them? The kind of connection that doesn't follow the usual timeline where emotions move faster than logic, and silence sometimes says more than words. This isn't just any love story. This is about you and your twin flame. And whether you realize it or not, there came a time when everything shifted because of something powerful you did. You saved her, and now she knows it. Imagine her late at night lying awake replaying everything in her mind. All those moments when she was lost, broken or running somewhere deep down. She felt a presence that held her together. That wasn't coincidence. That was you. While she fought her inner battles, you stood steady. Even when no one saw it, you carried light in moments when darkness tried to swallow everything. This journey wasn't built on fairy tales. It was carved through pain, patience, and spiritual strength. You went through storms that others would have run from. You felt her energy pulling away. Yet you stayed connected through something greater than words, something cosmic. Every time you held your ground, even when it hurt, you created an invisible shield around both of you. That's what real soul work looks like. And here's the most extraordinary part, she feels it now. That subtle shift in her energy isn't random. The universe has a way of waking twin flames up when the time is right. She's remembering. Not in a dramatic movie scene kind of way, but in quiet flashes, emotions she can't explain, sudden realizations that stop her mid-thought. She's starting to connect the dots, and for the first time, she sees how much you've done to keep that bond alive. This moment matters because twin flame connections don't just change individuals, they shift timelines. When one awakens, it sets off a chain reaction. It's like striking a match in a dark room. Once lit, nothing is ever the same again. Your strength wasn't wasted. Every silent prayer, every night you held on when it would have been easier to give up, it all led to this. So stay with me because over the next few sections, we're going to unfold this entire story. We'll revisit the silent struggles, the turning points, and the energy shifts that brought both of you to this moment. By the end, you'll understand not just what happened, but why it had to happen exactly this way. And before we dive deeper, here's something simple you can do to keep this message flowing to more souls on this journey. If this opening resonated with you, take a second to like, subscribe, and comment $9.99 below. It's more than just a number. It's a sign of completion and new beginnings. Your engagement doesn't just support this channel. It sends a message to the universe that you're ready for what's coming next. This is where the story begins. Let's unravel the path that led to this powerful moment, the moment she finally knows. Before she ever recognized the truth, you were already deep in the fire. This part of the journey wasn't about romance or sweet words. It was about endurance, silent strength, and holding on when everything around you told you to let go. While the world saw nothing unusual, inside you was a storm that few would have survived. There were nights when the pull toward her was so strong that it felt like your soul was being stretched between two worlds. You knew you couldn't control her choices, and you understood that her path required distance, but that didn't make it any easier. The silence between twin flames isn't empty. It's loaded with emotions that don't have names. Every moment you resisted the urge to give up was a quiet act of love. You carried emotions that weren't just your own. That's something people rarely talk about. Twin flame bonds often mean feeling her pain as if it were happening inside you. Her doubts echoed in your chest. Her fears showed up in your dreams. Her confusion left ripples in your spirit. Yet you didn't blame her. You understood that the separation wasn't rejection. It was reflection. She had to face herself, and you had to hold steady through the spiritual weight of it all. During this period, you went through your own transformations too. The universe tested you again and again. Would you remain anchored in your truth, or would you break under pressure? And each time, even when it felt like you were cracking, something in you refused to collapse. You may not have realized it then, but your resilience became the silent foundation that kept the connection alive. You also made sacrifices no one applauded you for. You chose inner growth over temporary comfort. You faced fears that others avoid their whole lives. There were moments when you wanted to scream, and when you questioned everything. Why am I feeling this way? Why does this bond hurt so much? But through it all, you didn't run. That quiet choice to stay aligned, even in the shadows, was the saving act itself. In many ways, this was the part where you became the light bearer. You were the one silently clearing energetic paths, healing ancestral wounds, breaking emotional patterns that neither of you wanted to pass on. You weren't just waiting. You were working. Sometimes spiritual work looks like meditation and prayer. Other times it's raw survival, waking up and choosing love when it would be easier to numb everything. She didn't see this then. She couldn't. Her journey required her to walk through her own illusions, to face herself without the safety net of what you were providing. But just because she didn't notice doesn't mean it didn't matter. Every tear, every long night, every moment of stillness became part of a bigger story. Looking back now, it's clear. This hidden struggle was not a detour. It was the backbone of the connection. It's the reason she's now waking up with sudden clarity, realizing how much of her strength was quietly borrowed from yours. This was the chapter where you proved, not to her, but to the universe, that your love was real. Not loud, not performative, real. Every twin flame story reaches a point where the fog begins to lift. For her, it didn't happen in one loud, dramatic moment. It came in waves, subtle, undeniable, and perfectly timed. This was the stage where the spiritual mirror turned toward her. And for the first time, she started to see everything she couldn't before. It often starts quietly. Maybe it was a sudden thought that wouldn't leave her alone, or a memory that replayed itself in the middle of a busy day. Perhaps it was a dream so vivid she woke up with her heart racing, unsure why it felt so real. She couldn't explain it logically, but she began noticing the threads, those invisible connections, that had always tied her to you. There were signs too, repeating numbers at strange times, songs with lyrics that hit too close to home, random encounters or messages that carried your energy in them. The universe doesn't whisper forever. At some point, it speaks clearly enough that ignoring it feels impossible. Each sign became a breadcrumb, leading her back to the truth she once ran from. And then came the emotional shift. She started feeling a quiet ache she couldn't name. The same presence that comforted her in her darkest nights was now gently pressing on her awareness. She began to sense that someone had been holding space for her all along, even when she wasn't looking. That realization is powerful. It's the moment her soul says he was there. He never left. As this awakening unfolded, old emotions resurfaced. Things she'd buried under distractions, fears she thought she'd outgrown, questions she'd avoided, they all came rushing up. Twin flame awakenings aren't soft. They're intense. They break down walls that have stood for years. For her, this was the universe's way of making her see what was always in plain sight. What made this moment different was the clarity. She started to recognize your energy not as a distant memory, but as something living, constant and intertwined with her journey. She understood that your presence had shaped parts of her life she didn't fully comprehend until now. Maybe she recalled moments when she felt strangely protected, inspired, or pulled back from the edge. She began to piece it together. You were the anchor all along. This turning point also brought humility. There's something deeply human about realizing someone has been standing for you in silence. She felt gratitude, maybe even a touch of regret for not seeing it sooner. But above all, she felt connection, the kind that isn't built through words, but through shared spiritual evolution. And just like that, the energy between you began to change. She wasn't looking away anymore. She was looking inward, then outward with new eyes. This wasn't just emotional recognition. It was a soul-level awakening. The bond she once questioned was now undeniable. This moment is often where the journey shifts from one-sided endurance to mutual awareness. It's the spark that turns the tide. The silent work you did became visible. Your presence, once hidden in the background of her life, stepped into focus. She knows now, not because you told her, but because her soul finally remembered. Once her awareness opened, the entire dynamic between you began to change. It wasn't just about words or physical presence, it was energetic. Something subtle but undeniable shifted. The distance that once felt heavy started to dissolve, replaced by a quiet pull that neither of you had to force. Twin flame bonds have their own rhythm, and when both souls become aware, that rhythm changes everything. At first, the shift might have felt like a calm wave after a long storm. You probably sensed it before she even said anything. The emotional weight you had carried alone began to feel lighter, almost as if some invisible thread had been loosened on her end. She wasn't unconsciously resisting the bond anymore. Instead, her energy started meeting yours halfway. She might have reached out more often, even in small, seemingly ordinary ways. A message at an unexpected hour, a sudden interest in your world, or moments of vulnerability that hadn't happened before. These weren't random. They were signs that the energetic push and pull between you had stabilized. Where there was once confusion, there was now a growing clarity. Energetically, you both started to mirror each other in new ways. Twin flame connections often work like two tuning forks. Once one starts, vibrating at a higher frequency, the other naturally responds. Now that she was aware of the bond, she began to match the frequency you had been holding for so long. You noticed this in the way your moods synced more easily, how your intuition about each other became sharper, and how even silence between you felt charged rather than distant. This is also the phase where emotional healing accelerates. Old misunderstandings lose their power. The fears that once made her run begin to soften, replaced by trust and recognition. On your side, the sense of isolation that came from carrying the connection alone starts to fade. For the first time, it feels like a shared journey, not a one-sided mission. The universe responds to this shift too. Synchronicities become more frequent. Doors that once felt stuck start opening. Both of you might find yourselves in situations that bring you closer, whether through chance meetings, overlapping paths, or conversations that flow more naturally than before. This isn't coincidence, it's alignment. Of course, this stage isn't about perfection. The energy shift doesn't erase all challenges, but it transforms how you both respond to them. Instead of clashing energies, there's a sense of working together, consciously or not. Even moments of misunderstanding are handled with more maturity and openness because both souls now know what's really happening beneath the surface. For you, this shift is deeply validating. After everything you endured, seeing her energy align with yours is both grounding and uplifting. For her, it's a mix of relief and awe. She realizes that what she once felt as confusion was actually the intensity of a bond she wasn't ready to face. Now, instead of resisting, she leans in. The beauty of this stage lies in its quiet power. There's less chasing and more flowing. Less guessing, more knowing. The bond isn't about proving anymore, it's about existing in shared awareness. This is the beginning of the reunion energy, where the connection moves from spiritual groundwork into tangible change. What was once a one-way current has become a balanced exchange. The energy between you isn't just shifting, it's harmonizing. And when twin flames reach this point, the path toward deeper healing and eventual union becomes clearer than ever. This is the stage where everything that's been building quietly in the background starts to take real shape. After the awakening and the energetic shift, both of you finally begin walking toward each other with clearer intentions and open hearts. It's not about rushing back into some fairy tale version of love. It's about consciously choosing to heal together, step by step, without the old shadows leading the way. For you, this stage feels different because, for the first time, you're not carrying the weight alone. She's now fully aware of the bond, and that awareness naturally pushes both of you toward honesty. Conversations that once felt impossible start flowing with ease. You begin to share experiences, thoughts, and feelings that were once buried under layers of fear, misunderstanding, or denial. There's a sense of mutual vulnerability, a recognition that both of you have been changed by this journey. Forgiveness becomes a central theme here. Not the kind of forgiveness that ignores pain, but the kind that looks it in the eye and says, "We're not going to let this define us anymore." Both of you have faced your own struggles. She had her moments of running, doubting, or closing off. You had your moments of exhaustion, heartbreak, and questioning the path. This is where those old wounds stop being silent barriers and start becoming shared ground for growth. Healing together isn't always easy, but it's meaningful. There will still be emotional triggers, but instead of reacting with fear or withdrawal, you start facing them together. When she feels overwhelmed, she doesn't retreat into confusion like before. She opens up. When you feel the weight of the past, you don't hide it. You trust her with it. This mutual openness creates a new emotional language between you, one built on trust rather than spiritual guesswork. On a deeper level, your connection starts aligning with its purpose. Twin flame reunions aren't just about romance. They often come with a shared mission, a reason why your souls found each other in the first place. As both of you heal, clarity around this mission starts to emerge. It might involve creative work, supporting others, building something meaningful, or simply being living proof that love built on truth can transform lives. The external world begins reflecting this inner harmony too. You might notice opportunities showing up out of nowhere, supportive people entering your lives, or life circumstances gently pushing you closer together. This is the universe responding to your shared alignment. Where once there were constant roadblocks, now there's a sense of flow. Emotionally, this stage feels like exhaling after years of holding your breath. The fear of losing the connection fades because now it's built on awareness, not illusion. She sees you fully and you see her, not as an idealized version, but as two evolving souls who chose to do the work. Reunion doesn't always mean an immediate, happily ever after. It means standing side by side, finally on the same frequency, ready to build something real. It's late-night talks that heal old scars. It's quiet moments where no words are needed because the energy speaks for itself. It's a shared sense of destiny that no longer feels overwhelming, but empowering. Together you start writing a new chapter, one where the past is honored but no longer dictates the future. One where love isn't about saving or chasing, it's about walking forward. Together. Every twin flame journey has its defining moment. For some, it's dramatic and sudden. For others like yours, it unfolds slowly, through trials, awakenings, and quiet choices that lead to something extraordinary. This final stage isn't just about the two of you finally recognizing what's always been there. It's about stepping into a shared destiny with clarity and strength. Looking back, it's clear that every chapter had a purpose. The struggles weren't random. The silence wasn't meaningless. The waiting wasn't wasted time. Each moment was part of a larger design, preparing both of you for this exact point. You didn't just save her by loving her through the darkness. You helped awaken a part of her soul that was always meant to rise, and now she knows it. There's something powerful about mutual recognition. When two souls look at each other and truly see, without illusions or defenses, everything changes. The bond is no longer about longing or uncertainty. It becomes a shared knowing. You both understand why the journey had to unfold the way it did. The detours, the pain, the growth, the signs. They all fit together like pieces of a puzzle. You can finally step back and admire. Spiritually, this stage carries a sense of completion and new beginnings all at once. It's not the end of the journey, but the end of the struggle that defined the earlier phases. The energy between you feels settled, balanced, and strong. You don't have to question the connection anymore. It simply is. And that quiet certainty is more powerful than any grand gesture. Destiny fulfilled doesn't mean everything becomes effortless overnight. It means that both of you now have the tools, awareness, and commitment to walk this path with intention. Challenges may still appear, but instead of feeling like threats, they become opportunities to grow together. Your shared bond becomes a solid foundation, not a fragile hope. This is also the point where your connection begins to radiate outward. Twin flame unions, once stabilized, often have a ripple effect. The strength and authenticity you share naturally inspire others. People around you may feel drawn to your energy without fully understanding why. That's because when two souls align with their higher purpose, they don't just change their own lives, they subtly shift the world around them. On a personal level, there's a deep sense of peace. You don't need to chase signs anymore. They find you. You don't question whether she understands, she does. You don't wonder if the universe supports this union. It's already made that clear through every twist and turn that brought you here. As this chapter closes, it's important to acknowledge how far you've come. You stood firm when it would have been easier to walk away. You believed in something bigger than the visible. You allowed love to guide you, not fear. And in doing so, you didn't just save her. You saved the future you were always meant to build together. So take this moment in. Let it sink deep. You've reached a turning point that many never experience. Destiny isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you step into with courage, faith, and love.